Hello, I'm Tom Knox, and I'm the founder and CEO of CareFamily. And I want to welcome you to this video, especially for caregivers, about dealing with stress in the caregiving field. Let's talk about some of the issues of caregiving and stress and what people face and the kind of things that bring on the real stress in the caregiving field. And the first one I want to talk about is dealing with aging and often issues of death. Obviously, those of us who enter the caregiving field understand we're dealing with a senior population that's going to be dealing with a roller coaster of diagnosis, chronic illnesses, and eventually, if you're working in the hospice field or working with a client long-term, death. And that can be a very stressful thing. And oftentimes I see caregivers who are so well equipped to deal with this, but they're dealing maybe with multiple families and multiple seniors, or they're with somebody for a number of years, and they eventually, if they don't handle it right, can become really burned out. So it's important you manage stress in this and recognize the fact that you're going to be facing these issues. And before you get in the caregiving field and while you're in it, understand that it's very important for you to be prepared to deal with that roller coaster of those issues. The second is dealing with the fact that many seniors are dealing with depression. And that's okay. I think a lot of us are prepared to help them through providing great companionship and meals and getting them out of the house to deal with their issues of depression. However, being around depressed people who you're trying to make happy, who are taking, honestly, a lot of your emotional energy as you work with them, can create stress in your own life. And it's very important that when you're dealing that, you're filling your tank as well, so that you're not leaving everything you have, every emotion, every ounce of energy, into helping them build up. But you're taking care of you're taking care of yourself as well. But dealing with seniors who oftentimes deal with depression can be a really tough thing. The next thing I want to talk about is dealing with that kind of family dynamics. Okay? When you're a caregiver and you're dealing with a senior and you're watching the multiple family dynamics go on, oftentimes you can be caught in the middle of that. And I find even when in my own job, when I'm dealing with multiple family members who have maybe different priorities, different ideas of what should happen, boy, it can become very, very stressful. So you have to make sure that when you're dealing with this, you're very clear in your communication and that you're understanding that you can't solve every problem, but you're able to make sure you take care of yourself in the body of that very, very stressful environment. So let's talk about different things that caregivers can do to relieve the stress that surrounds them as a caregiver. We talked about things like dealing with seniors who are dealing with health issues, and even death and dying obviously comes into play. You're dealing with seniors who are often facing depression, that at times it's hard to be in that environment where you're trying to help someone constantly when they're facing depression. And the last is dealing with the family dynamics and multiple family members. Well, it's really important you take care of yourself. You're taking care of yourself physically and emotionally and spiritually to make sure that you don't burn out. A lot of times caregivers are the ones who suffer a lot because they're the ones who give so much, whether that's a family member or a professional caregiver. So I want to talk about a couple of things you can do to really help yourself in making sure that you stay healthy. And the first thing I want to talk about is being around young people, kids, friends, that really rejuvenate you. And I put young people and kids because I found personally in dealing with senior-based issues, and I made this transition to this field, I found myself dealing with senior issues all the time. And it honestly made me feel a bit older. It made me feel like I was in the midst of all these problems in my own personal life. And I quickly found that it was very important for me to almost act like a kid, to be around more children, to be doing active things that I used to do a little bit more of. It was more important for me to make that link because oftentimes if you're with people who are 20, 30, 40 years older than you are, you often begin to take that feeling on a little bit. And it's very important you compensate for that and stay very active and surround yourself with the kind of young, energetic environment as much as you can that really makes a difference. The second one I want to talk about is making sure that you're exercising, that you're staying active, and you're eating well. A big part of this is making sure that physically you're ready for all this. And oftentimes people in the healthcare field, they're so sacrificial that they almost give up some of the things they have to do to stay healthy. They're not eating well, they're eating on the run, and they feel like because they're doing such good work that it almost makes up for the things they're neglecting in themselves. So it's very, very important that if you get into the caregiving field and you're feeling the stress, that you back up and you say, okay, where is my half hour of exercise? What am I doing to make sure that I'm staying fresh? Am I constantly eating fast foods? Am I eating, junk just to kind of keep compensating and keep my energy level? It's very important you step back and take care of yourself very well. And the next is to make sure that you set up a very clear boundary with family members. Okay, what does that mean? It means that if you're dealing with a family dynamic where oftentimes you have sons and daughters and people coming in from out of town and you're the professional caregiver and you're getting multiple instructions, and some people are saying, well, I think he should never go out of the house because it's too dangerous and he'll fall. And then the daughter's saying to you, well, we got to get him out, otherwise he'll feel like a shut-in, it's going to be too tough. You have to make sure you set boundaries. A couple examples are, make sure you have maybe one main interface with a family that's going to give you clear directions. Set up what you're going to do and not do. I oftentimes see caregivers who are asked to do a lot of tasks. It could be cleaning, it could be certain things they're not comfortable with, but multiple people are asking them to do stuff that either they don't want to do or they can't do in the body of a 4 or 8 hour shift. So it's very important that you set a boundary and that you make sure you stick to it and you have an interface with one main person who's kind of the coordinator for the family. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is just for many of us in the caregiving field, our faith is very important. And it's important that you don't give that part up. That prayer and whether it's your synagogue or your church or your mosque, that you are staying in touch with your faith because it's a real important part of this. And oftentimes we find in dealing with seniors themselves, it's an important part of their life. So I wouldn't even neglect the fact you may be praying or helping them, and it may help you too. So this field that you're in as a caregiver has a very high calling, but you're not good to any of us unless you take care of yourself first. There's the saying when you go on to an airplane and the people come up and say, look, if there's a problem with cabin pressure, there's a mask that falls down. And you have to put the oxygen on yourself before you put it on a child or a family member. It's the same thing here. You've got to take care of yourself. You have to be able to breathe in order to help other people effectively.